хто прямує до Америки, скаже пару слів, благословить нас таким чином.
Sure.
Thank you.
Do I just speak louder for the question?
So I guess I'll start, how does it feel to be in the United States?
Ми ще мало що встигли зрозуміти, тому
We
що
haven't seen much. We've been here for just a couple of days, but we are very grateful for all the people that have met us, for all the volunteers, and just who warmly welcomed us here.
What do you mean by that? Нельзя взяти?
на кордоні нас зустріли дуже.
And at the border, the people that met us, they were very professional, very quick, and they did all the paperwork really professionally and fast.
Це церквами, волонтерами.
We are so grateful for the things that have been done here by the churches, by the volunteers.
So it's basically like, because they traveled a lot from Ukraine, right? And it's kind of a comfort food. It's something familiar for them. A part of their home, when they come in, it's like, oh, I can actually have some borscht, you know? It's cabbage and carrots. More, you sauté it first, and then some add even kidney beans. I'm just blown away by the people, how they cooked. Everybody brought some borscht, you know, so generous.
I came with a one-way ticket from San Francisco. When I heard that there were immigrants or migrants, you know, Ukrainian refugees accumulating at the border. We worked collaboratively on making sure that, you know, it has the basics that are needed to house. At that point, we were probably at like 1,500 people. We also mobilized an advocacy platform on the U.S. side to increase processing capacity at the border. The wait time was about, I think at its worst, 4 or 5 days. We're down to a few hours at this point.
Is there anything that you've noticed, you know, from Mexican government and U.S. government about like the treatment of different groups of refugees?
I understand that the conditions we have here compared to what is typical, there is a major difference.
Por allá era la señorita, ¿vale, Alison? Pañal, no te da vergüenza que la muchacha mire cosas pañal todavía. Me da mucho miedo, de hecho, a veces cuando nos toca salir, a veces vamos al centro. Me da miedo más que...
¿De dónde vienes tú?
Honduras. Y nos dicen que tengamos paciencia, que ahorita está cerrada la frontera, que no hay paso para nadie. Para nosotros ha sido muy duro, más que todo para los niños, porque han quedado traumados. Nos venimos 6, pero me hace falta un niño, lo dejé en Honduras con mi abuela. Porque en ese entonces él padece mucho de asma. A ella le dio cuando estaba chiquita.
¿Cómo llegaste aquí?
Bueno, aquí a México llegamos el 1 de mayo del año pasado. Pues yo quisiera poder cruzar, y primeramente porque mis hijos están ya hace un año sin atención médica y ellos necesitan su tratamiento, y lo cual aquí no lo he recibido.
¿Qué es lo que les dicen ellos?
Que hay mucha gente y hay que tener paciencia.
I assume we can use your name.
Yes, I am the only one who's safely. My name is Catherine Kruger. I'm an advocate I had a law degree, post-degree studies on international humanitarian law, human rights, immigration, both Mexican and US law. But when I got here 2 years ago, it was mostly refugees from Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. But then we started getting a lot of Mexican people. But when you have Mexican people running away from their own country, that tells you that it isn't safe.
Have you yourself faced dangers outside of the walls here because of what you do?
Yes.
Like what?
I mean, that's way beyond what I can say, but yes. Migration is a human right because you have to think about this. Nobody at all, ever, is gonna leave their home unless it's the mouth of a wolf. If you think about a migrant, you always think like, oh, they're running away. They're because they don't want to work or whatever. Just a migrant doesn't become a migrant on their own choice. It's, I mean, on their own decision. It's just the last choice. There's people with kids and stuff like that. Nobody in their sane mind is gonna leave.
Teníamos un negocio familiar y desde el 2018 pagábamos extorsión. La extorsión es una cuota que ponen las pandillas para poderlo dejar vender sus productos. Nos dijeron que para el 28 de abril, si no recogíamos el dinero, pues iban a empezar a matar a mí, a mis hijos y a mi esposo. Y yo dejé allá todo, pues, o sea, solo agarré una cuanta ropa y allá quedó todo.
Sábado asesinaron a mi papá, las maras y pandillas. Pero anteriormente de eso, en el 2013, asesinaron a mi abuela, a mi tío y a un yerno por parte de mi abuela, hermano de mi papá. Fue una masacre de 3 personas. Después de eso, de lo que le pasó a mi papá, nos empezaron las amenazas, que me daban 24 horas para salir del país. Agarré lo poco que tenía, mis hijos, mi esposo, yo. Y un día antes de salir nos balacearon la casa. Entonces, como estaba involucrado problemas de droga, entonces eso fue lo que nos obligó a salir de nuestro país. Y nos dijo que todavía la petición de asilo no estaba abierta para centroamericanos. Y me dijo de que todas estas historias él ya las sabía y que eran puras mentiras.
¿La persona de inmigración te dijo eso?
Sí, de que todas las personas que llegaban ahí llegaban con esa misma historia y que eso era pura mentira.
So this road will take us up to the primary and secondary fence, which borders both countries, Mexico and the U.S. Supervisory Border Patrol Agent Hector Quintanilla out of San Diego sector. It gets pretty windy. This area is pretty notorious for agents' assaults, just because of its topography and where people can hide and easily return into Mexico.
Intel 690 smugglers are with tonight between the suspects.
If you had to estimate how many attempts to cross over between the ports of entry would you say you see in a day, in a week, in a month?
It varies from station to station. Again, I think it all depends on the topography. It's a lot easier in certain areas to cross than it is in others. So it depends. I mean, so one day this Imperial Beach, for example, can estimate anywhere between 100 to 200 entries. It's not easy, obviously. Not only are they putting the person's life that they're smuggling in danger, but they're putting the general public in danger, and ultimately my life in danger, trying to, apprehend them. Probably get a better view from up here of this area's general terrain.
What are we looking at right now?
So right here we're looking at the furthest west point of the United States.
When you're seeing, in some cases, families, you're saying right now, mostly single adults, what is their response typically if they are caught?
Every response is different. Most of them are just looking for a better life. A lot of them are evading their country for political reasons, claiming political asylum. Other ones are just avoiding crime. Their cities where they come from, they're just being invaded by crime, and they just want to escape that scene.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has decided to exercise its authority under the Title 42. Every week, our border agents encounter thousands of unscreened, unvetted, and unauthorized entries from dozens of countries. Will protect the health of all three nations and reduce the incentive for a mass global migration that would badly deplete.
I don't know what the administration has planned once Title 42 is lifted as to how they are going to process everyone who has been waiting. We're approaching 2 years now of having Title 42 in place. Biden did issue a memo allowing for an exemption to Title 42 for Ukrainian nationals. CBP has a broad discretion to issue humanitarian parole documents, which is usually what is being given to Ukrainian nationals at our southern border. A lot of Ukrainian nationals allowed to enter the United States given this parole document. Some are being placed in proceedings, deportation proceedings, others are not. But really it's a case-by-case determination by CBP.
Erica Pinheiro, and I'm the Litigation and Policy Director of Al Otro Lado. I've been helping with legal orientation for the Ukrainian refugee community that's coming through Tijuana. The border has been closed to asylum seekers generally since March of 2020. But before that, if someone were a refugee and trying to seek humanitarian protection in the United States, in many cases they would be detained. They would be put into what's called removal proceedings, which is basically immigration court. They would have to go before an immigration judge and either within immigration detention or outside of immigration detention, and have to submit an application to remain in the United States. So that process could take years. They could never see the outside of a prison in the United States. So what we're seeing with Ukrainians is really a vast contrast to how processing normally works at the border for other populations. We had a camp of other migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border for about a year. It was violently vacated by the Mexican government a few months ago, and those migrants remain mostly homeless on the streets of Tijuana. It would be great if the Tijuana government would provide either this shelter or another shelter like it for the many migrants who remain homeless on the streets of Tijuana. So far, we haven't seen that type of support for other populations.
One of the things that I see that they're really organized. You know, they're in a shelter where it's the government property, but the people who run the place, they're the same people. They're from Ukraine, and they are the ones who are doing everything. You know, people from the United States are coming, giving things to them and everything. Yeah.
Have you seen that same support from people from the United States and from the Mexican government or any other government, being given to Haitians, people from Central America?
You know, I be honest to you, I see this with the people from Central America, you know, not too far from here is El Chaparral. We have, for a year, we have a lot of tents. People were living there. We see a lot of help from the Americans. They brought a lot of things for them all the time. But we see less help for the people from Haiti. They didn't have a special place to stay, you know, like the people from Honduras did. And it was, for me, I see was a lot of help for them. And for the Haitians, no. Yeah. Right now, there are 25 shelters, and all the shelters are full because there's a lot of people asking for asylum. So they're waiting here in the shelter. So it's hardly any shelter right now.
When you see the Ukrainian people come down here and we talk to them, they say we've been here a week, who've been here 2 weeks, and we're talking to them on the other side of the border, and they have papers to go. And what do you think about that process for them and for everybody else?
Well, I try to explain to people who come here, you know, especially people from Honduras, they're kind of upset because they've been waiting a year or 6 months or more than that. But I explain to them that the reason why it's happening is because the situation the people from Ukraine are.
You left from Ukraine?
Да, yeah.
What did you see in Ukraine before you left?
Big war and смерти, died, death, people. And so I was a volunteer, yeah? Так оно будет.
So she was helping as a volunteer, but then the bombing and the shooting got really bad, so she took her kids and she left.
How long did it take you to get here? How did you leave?
Как долго заняло, чтобы сюда приехать, знаешь, как с Украины?
4 дня. 4 days. We fly in Wrocław to Amsterdam. 18 hours in Amsterdam. Next, Amsterdam, Bogota. 10 hours in Bogota. Next, Bogota, Cancun. Cancun, Mexico, Guadalajara, Tijuana. And so we are here.
Our refugee program picks up people at the airport, takes them to the center, and from there we have buses that take them to the border and they walk across.
How do you feel right now?
I'm so happy. Arina, you're happy? Are you happy?
Yeah. Yes.
You feel relieved.
Какое облегчение ты тут чувствуешь, да?
Да. An ocean smell.
I guess tell him, what has your journey been like up until this point?
Останні декілька тижнів в Україні вже багато.
There is a war going on in Ukraine, so many people choose their own path, and they choose places where they go. For him specifically, he took his wife and 5 of his kids and made his way here.
Tell me about how many people you know within your immediate family, your friends, colleagues, that are one of the many, many people who have not survived this war.
Є такі.
We know some, and it really hurts, and without tears, it's impossible to even tell the stories.
How painful is it to go through something like this, to escape, to flee, to leave everything you have?
Звичайно, це прикро і боляче.
Of course, it's painful and difficult. We didn't even think we would be in this situation.
Як нас в Україні кажуть, що в гостях добре.
In Ukraine, we have this saying, it's good to be a guest elsewhere, but it's a lot better to be at home.
Тому ми розділені між одними і іншими, тобто серце подвоєне.
So we are separated between one and the other, so our heart is split.
Не просто це.
It's not an easy thing.
My family came from Russia. Actually, we crossed the border on the 26th of December. My status is a seeker of asylum. If you not flee from Russia, you end up in prison, or you'd be poisoned, or you'd be thrown in jail, anything, if you're on the opposition side.
What has compelled you to be a volunteer here? You just got here yourself. Why volunteer?
Yeah, because when normal people go through difficulties, they want to help others, in the same situation.
We haven't been here long, but one of the things, we talked to someone who works for shelters on the Mexico side, and they talk about the contrast between, and I'm sure you've heard this, how Ukrainians have been welcomed and how people from other countries have been welcomed. What do you think about that?
It's not the problem of the people who come to USA, but the problem of those who receive those people. How do I put this? If you look alike, you tend to help those peoples more than the others. Like white people help more white people. Latin people help more Latin people.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa.
I just got back again from visiting the border. What I observed were 1,000 Ukrainian refugees coming into Tijuana on a daily basis. About 500 of them are actually passed into the U.S. under temporary protective status. And Title 42 is also being waived for them right now to come into the United States. So my question, Mr. Secretary, how do you distinguish one group of refugees from another? Why don't you do the same thing for Afghanistan, Syrians, Africans, Central Americans? I guess my bigger question would be, sir, what's our American refugee policy? Now I'd have to ask for my colleagues here too.
I would say of skin color, that we are still far, far, far away in this country from being equal. Jimmy Marslin. I'm a refugee coordinator for Safe Harbors. Our mission is to taking care of the refugees from everywhere. So far, we have had over 27 different countries. If you are seeing what happened, I would say 8 months ago with the Haitians when they were crossing the border, they treated them like slaves. They treated them like they were inhuman. And now we have a flood of Ukrainians that are coming in. Everybody, I'm getting calls from everybody that wants to open their door. Right now, I have 15 housing just waiting for Ukrainians. It was different with the Haitians. It was different with the Latinos.
Everybody remembers what they saw almost a year ago of the Border Patrol on horseback hitting Haitians with like a whip. Oh, it was the reign of the horse. And I go, really? Does that matter that it was the reign of a horse and not a whip? And I go, one thing you cannot envision that Border Patrol hitting a Ukrainian. Never happened, never happened. I'm really glad that people are welcoming the Ukrainians. It's horrible what's going on. But how about the Haitians or the people from El Salvador or Mexico? How come they're not being welcomed? They love their families too. They deserve to be able to cross. So there's a tremendous amount of racism.
Déjame ver, de Brasil duró un mes para llegar hasta México. Y después, cuando llegué a México, duré 4 meses allá y después vine para acá. Para mí que todo sería normal cuando yo llegué aquí, porque siempre escuché muchas personas hablar de este país. Solo que cuando llegué aquí, vi que no era eso que la gente hablaba.
¿Cómo es?
Es diferente.
mean, what are some of the things that you find? You said water bottles. I mean, there's sandals, clothes. What do you see?
Right, articles of clothing, shoes, lots of water bottles, food. Sometimes they come with food that's been sitting in their bag for quite some time, so it goes bad. So all they do is they'll toss it out. Articles of clothing. Well, fiscal year today, we're up to 2,000, a little over 2,500 unaccompanied minors that we've encountered throughout the border. We've already exceeded that number from last year, and we're currently on a straight path to supersede the numbers from the year before. And I think the youngest I've encountered is probably like 4 or 5 years old. It's hard to comprehend, again, as a parent. But then again, you know, I'm not in their situation. I don't know what they're dealing with. I don't know what they're fearing from in their home country. So, you know, you can't judge people.
What is the morale of people trying to cross the border, and then they're seeing people from Ukraine passing through within 12,
That is
24?
very unfair, that they're afraid too, that they're suffering too, that their country failed them too, that they were targeted and threatened too, and how, because of their color of the skin, is it that makes them more or less valuable?
Everything is ruled by politics, right? And politicians are driven by those who vote for them. During the first weeks, we didn't have any help from Mexican government, from United States government, but when we began to invite media and all the situation began come up on the media, politics began to work and they began to make it nice, look nice. My opinion is we're like, we are like when you play chess, you have these figures, and these figures, you have to sacrifice by these little ones. So, and the whole immigration system is like a check game, and we are like figures in this game. And somebody is playing, and if it's necessarily, you just sacrificed. If it's not, you just stay on the board. That's what I think about the system right now.
Today, I'm announcing a program, Unite for Ukraine, a new program to enable Ukrainians seeking refuge to come directly from Europe to the United States. Approximately two-thirds of all Ukrainian children have been displaced from their home. More than 5 million Ukrainians have fled their country. It's an absolute outrage.
I'm happy that Ukrainians are able to arrive somewhere safely, and I truly believe that that is a right that we all have. But I don't know. I don't know why the administration is able to process these particular applications in a matter of hours, whereas others take days, weeks, months to process.
Pues siento que es bastante injusto, pues porque yo ya llevo mucho tiempo aquí esperando una respuesta por la situación de salud de mis niños y siento que le dan más prioridad. No quiero ni pensarlo porque no tengo dónde ir. No tengo dónde ir y pues es algo muy complicado porque no me gustaría quedarme en la calle, no tengo nada aquí, ni familia.
There's been people knocking on the same door for months, even years, and nobody opened them for them because of a lot of interests. People came here, just gave a little knock, and they got the door open. On the very same spot, place, location where people waited for months, lived there for months under the rain, under the sun, violence and everything. And that's where they're going through.
What do you want people to know about the current status of the border?
That I wish that they never get to see what I've seen, what I've heard. Because if you didn't sign up for this job, there's no way that you're coming back from it.
So this is Chula Vista's area of operations. On the south side, it's known for one of Tijuana's poorest neighborhoods.
So how many miles are you covering, and what are you looking for?
San Diego sector covers 60 land miles. Our main focus is to stop and detect terrorist weapons, anything coming across the borders, narcotics.
What's the highest number of people that you've, I guess, stopped in one day trying to cross between the ports of entry?
I mean, off the top of my head, I think the biggest group I personally have encountered was probably 45 people at one time. We identify everybody that comes across illegally, make sure they have no criminal history. And it all depends, again, on a case-by-case basis. Title 42, if they have no criminal history, then they would just be returned back to Mexico. But in certain cases, depending on what country they were from, then they would be processed accordingly.
Sueño americano no existe, porque es demasiado. Lo que yo sufrí en esos tiempos era demasiado. Que antes de salir y antes de venir con los hijos, hay que pensarlo muchas veces. Las consecuencias, psicológicamente sí les afecta mucho, les afectó muchísimo.
Pues la verdad sí ha sido una experiencia muy dura. Sí hemos sufrido bastante, más con mis hijos. Durante todo el camino enfermos, nos tocó aguantar hambre, dormir en la calle muchas veces, fuera de las estaciones de los buses.
The psychological impact of the children that have not been able to get to the United States that are on the border, in this case the US-Mexican border, is tremendous. It's just horrific. A society is judged on how we treat our children, and regardless of how you feel about this issue, you'll have viewers that agree, that disagree, but nobody can say the children are at fault. The children are not at fault. So we do everything possible to so that the people will see the children and going, come on, You know, we got to treat these people with dignity, these children, and it's not happening.
Estabas platicando sobre tus hijos, que sientes que han ya sentido que tienen consecuencias lo que ha pasado.
De hecho, cuando nosotros nos cruzamos el río, la niña que estaba conmigo casi se me ahoga porque la llevaba yo y la corriente nos arrastró. Y ella, al ver mucha agua, ella se pone a llorar, se desespera y como cuando llueve mucho aquí, la calle se pierde. Entonces cuando ella mira la calle, que cuando está lloviendo, ella se pone a llorar y ella me dice, mami, nos vamos a ahogar.
Simplemente le dijimos que nos íbamos de viaje, íbamos a ir de vacaciones y, o sea, hasta el momento él me dice, mamá, ¿cuándo vamos a regresar a la casa? Y es algo muy complicado porque no sé, no encuentro palabras para explicarle a él.
Careful with your heads if you're tall. My name is Sique Calderon Vargas. I'm co-director and co-founder of Refugee Health Alliance.
My name is Jimena Rojas Garcia, and I'm also co-director and co-founder of Refugee Health Alliance.
This is one of our offices. You can see an examination table there, an EKG machine, nebulizers. This is where we see around 80 to 100 patients a day. 70 to 80% of our patients are from Haiti.
We were visiting shelters because a big wave of migrants from different parts of South America arrived, also migrants from Haiti, Congo, Africa were headed to the border.
We started needing more space and more space and more space, so we built this. And the first space that we built was the midwifery clinic.
We found that no matter what, babies were being born. Some of them are very pregnant even during the migration journey, and it's hard because when they are passing through that journey, sometimes they don't have access to water, they don't have access to use the toilet. People arrive very dehydrated, and we try to check them and help them as soon as possible.
We do patient care here and over here. Today we have Acupuncturists Without Borders, Andrina, she's great.
¿Qué significa para usted o qué significó para usted el estar en un albergue y poder recibir asistencia médica cada vez que pues esta clínica iba?
Pues me dio alegría porque imagine de repente uno, la verdad que uno viene sufriendo desde que uno sale. La niña me enfermó del pecho y aquí pues me atendieron y lo siguen haciendo. Cuando necesito algo están siempre, tengo el apoyo de ellos pues, de todos. Como yo tengo problemas en mi columna, necesito una cirugía, pero ya primeramente Dios la voy a recibir en Estados Unidos.
Right now, USCIS has about 9.5 million pending applications. This is not something that we are happy about.
I mean, the president shares the concern about the lack of a workable immigration system.
I've been a U.S. citizen for over 20 years. You know, I've been in California for 25 years. I've heard that we have a broken immigration system. I have to admit, I just never really felt what that means or understood what that means. Now I do.
My name is Felicia Escobar Carrillo, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief of Staff of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. I'm pleased to be moderating today's briefing during the one-year anniversary of several critical immigration-related executive orders.
Let me be very clear. Our processing times are too long. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We received questions and feedback in advance from many of you expressing your frustration about processing delays.
Right now, USCIS has about 9.5 million pending applications for applications, petitions, and requests for immigration benefits. This is not something that we are happy about. We are not satisfied with the length of time that it takes for applications to be completed.
Go ahead.
I want to ask you about some of the concerns that Democrats are expressing about Title 42, if it is in fact lifted. And Senator Mark Kelly has said there's having things on a piece of paper and then what is going on in the southern border, and there's a huge disconnect.
I mean, the president shares the concern about the lack of a workable immigration system. There isn't an effective asylum processing system because we don't have smart security. We spent years investing in a faulty border wall that was never going to be an effective mechanism. He shares their concerns about that, and he recognizes and agrees with that.
I think from the last administration to this one, we've been working hard and will continue to work hard, not just on oversight, but to restore the proper culture within the departments and agencies to treat people seeking asylum with much more dignity and much more respect. Seeking asylum is a right. Asylum is not guaranteed, but there needs to be a due process, a fair process, one based on humanity and respect.
The way our government treats asylum seekers is embarrassing to me. They treat them like criminals. Mark Lane, CEO, Minority Humanitarian Foundation. We work with migrants, refugees, asylum seekers on both sides of the border here in San Diego, Tijuana region. We bring lawyers to do workshops. We bring doctors to triage mental health care professionals. Any of the refugees that we work with that need clothing or anything like that, they can shop for free here. There's been kind of a hole in the area of people getting released late at night. There's no orgs really going out there. What happens is they get released in the middle of the night and ICE just drives away and leaves them there. So they're here, you know, a lot of them with no English or Spanish language skills, no money, no phones. I was down there a couple of weeks ago to pick up one person and I came back with 31 people. So that's also not uncommon. We should all be embarrassed that we have people living in squalid, fetid refugee camps on our doorstep. That should be embarrassing to everybody in this country, and it's not, and that's an issue. And half the country thinks it's okay, and it's not.
What I hope is, as a result of this effort and a lot of us coming here and seeing these types of issues in person, that we can mobilize enough people inside the country to pay attention and change some of our practices around the southern border. I think, you know, all people fleeing from disaster should be taken care of. It's our, you know, global responsibility to take care of people.
Just for people in general in the US, what would you like them to know about how they can help everybody, the way that you help everybody here?
First of all, if someone offers some resources, I want to thank the person. I also want to tell the others if they could open their arm, if they, not only to Ukrainians, to everyone.
We're not asking them like to welcome them in their home or anything. Just think of them, the least that they can do is just to think about migrants as humans. Of course, there's other ways, donate and stuff like that, but just be kind. There's a whole system that us models cannot fight if we are not united on both sides of the border. There's always good, and you can always do good. It is hard, but it isn't impossible.
The number one thing that we need is for people to know the truth. Because American people, like people all over the world in general, are good. They'll do the right thing. You know, they're good. It's not necessarily the people, it's the leaders.
Is it hard to feel like there's no hope?
No, there's always hope, always. If we work together, if we extend our hands in helping someone, there's always hope. There's always hope because this is the United States. I always tell someone who is complaining of not having enough, I always tell him that think of other countries, think of people from other countries. See how blessed you are. So there's always hope. Once we think that way, there's always hope.